The restaurant was alive with quiet conversations and the clinking of silverware against fine china. It wasn't just any restaurant. It was one of those places where people came not only to eat, but also to be seen. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, their light reflecting off polished wooden floors. The tables were draped in crisp white cloths, and every detail screamed luxury. Patrons dressed in expensive suits and designer dresses sat comfortably, sipping wine or enjoying gourmet meals. At a corner table near the window, Ethan Cole adjusted his tie absent-mindedly as he scrolled through emails on his phone. He was a tall man with sharp features and dark hair that was starting to gray at the temples. His tailored suit fit him perfectly, and his leather shoes gleamed under the soft lights. At 45, Ethan had built an empire through hard work, determination, and a knack for spotting opportunities others missed. But tonight he wasn't here for business. He rarely took time off, but after weeks of relentless meetings, he decided to treat himself to dinner at this upscale establishment. Ethan glanced around the room, taking note of the other diners. There were couples celebrating anniversaries, groups of friends laughing over shared plates, and even a few celebrities discreetly tucked into private booths. Everything about the place exuded sophistication, yet something felt off. Not wrong, exactly, but different, as if there was a story waiting to unfold beneath the surface of all this glamour. Across the room, Claire Harper moved quickly between tables, balancing trays laden with food. She wore the standard black and white uniform of the restaurant staff, though hers looked slightly worn compared to the pristine outfits of her co-workers. Her blonde hair was tied back in a neat ponytail, and her face carried the faint marks of fatigue. Despite this, she smiled warmly at each customer, always polite and attentive. Claire had been working as a waitress for years, and she knew how to keep her personal struggles hidden behind a professional demeanor. Tonight, however, hiding her troubles proved more difficult than usual. Tucked close to her side was her 6-year-old son, Liam. Normally, Claire would never bring him to work. She prided herself on being reliable, but today had been anything but normal. Her babysitter had called in sick at the last minute, leaving Claire with no choice but to bring Liam along. She hoped he could stay out of sight while she finished her shift, but children have a way of finding trouble when you least expect it. Liam was a bright-eyed boy with curly brown hair and an infectious smile. He clung to his mother's leg, peeking out shyly at the unfamiliar surroundings. To him, the restaurant seemed like a magical place, full of sparkling lights and fancy clothes. But what caught his attention most was the grand piano sitting near the entrance. Its glossy surface reflected the soft glow of the chandeliers, making it look almost otherworldly. "Mommy," Liam whispered, tugging gently on Claire's apron. "Can I play?" Claire froze mid-step, her heart sinking. She turned to look at him, her lips pressed together in a thin line. For a moment, she considered saying no. This wasn't their world. They didn't belong here among the wealthy elite who dined on lobster and champagne. What would people think if they saw a scruffy little boy touching such an expensive instrument? But then she looked into Liam's eyes. They were wide with hope, brimming with innocence and excitement. How could she deny him something so simple? With a sigh, she knelt down beside him, smoothing his sweater and brushing away imaginary lint. "Okay, sweetheart," she said softly, "but just for a minute. And don't touch anything too hard." Relieved, Liam nodded eagerly. Claire straightened up and glanced around nervously. No one seemed to notice them yet, which gave her some comfort. Taking a deep breath, she led Liam to the piano and lifted him onto the bench. He wobbled slightly as he settled in, his feet dangling above the floor. Claire stood behind him, ready to intervene if anyone objected. At first, Liam hesitated. His tiny fingers hovered over the keys, unsure where to begin. Then, slowly, he pressed one. The note rang out clear and pure, echoing softly through the restaurant. Encouraged, he pressed another, then another, until a clumsy melody began to take shape. It wasn't perfect, far from it, but it was heartfelt, filled with the kind of joy only a child could express. The sound drew attention. Conversations paused as heads turned toward the piano. Some guests smiled indulgently, amused by the unexpected performance. Others frowned, clearly disapproving of the interruption. Claire felt her stomach churn with anxiety. Any second now, someone would complain and she'd have to drag Liam away, apologizing profusely. But instead of anger, something surprising happened. One woman leaned forward, listening intently. Another couple exchanged glances, nodding approvingly. Even the manager, who had initially rushed over with a stern expression, softened upon hearing the music. Instead of scolding Claire, he simply crossed his arms and watched, allowing the moment to unfold. Ethan noticed the change in the atmosphere immediately. Setting his phone aside, he turned his chair slightly to get a better view of the piano. He saw the boy, small and earnest as he played, completely absorbed in the act of creation. And he saw the mother, standing protectively behind him, her posture tense but her eyes shining with pride. There was something deeply moving about the scene, something raw and unfiltered that stood in stark contrast to the polished perfection of the restaurant. Curiosity got the better of him. Rising from his seat, Ethan approached the hostess stand where a young woman was arranging menus. "Excuse me," he said, keeping his voice low. "Who is that playing the piano?" The hostess followed his gaze and smiled. "Oh, that's Claire Harper. She works here as a waitress. The little boy is her son Liam. I think he must have begged her to let him try the piano." Ethan nodded thoughtfully. "And does she often bring him to work?" "No, never," the hostess replied. "I'm guessing something came up. Poor thing looks exhausted." Ethan's interest deepened. He didn't know why, but he felt drawn to the pair. Perhaps it was the way Claire balanced vulnerability with strength, or maybe it was the purity of Liam's music cutting through the artificiality of the setting. Whatever the reason, he found himself wanting to learn more. As Liam continued playing, the tension in Claire's shoulders began to ease. She realized no one was asking them to leave, and the disapproving stares had faded. Instead, people seemed genuinely charmed by the impromptu performance. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that this moment wouldn't last. Sooner or later, reality would intrude, reminding her of her place in the world. When the final note faded into silence, applause erupted throughout the restaurant. Claire blinked in surprise, her cheeks flushing pink. She wrapped her arms around Liam, hugging him tightly. "You did great, sweetheart," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. It was then that Ethan stepped forward, capturing Claire's attention. He extended a hand toward Liam, who looked up at him with wide eyes. "That was incredible," Ethan said warmly. "You've got real talent, kid." Liam beamed, his earlier shyness melting away. Claire, however, remained cautious. She didn't recognize this man, though his confident demeanor suggested he was someone important. "Thank you," she said politely, stepping slightly in front of Liam as if to shield him. Ethan introduced himself, explaining that he owned several businesses and foundations aimed at supporting talented individuals. His words were kind, sincere, but Claire couldn't help feeling wary. People like him rarely entered her world without expecting something in return. Still, she listened carefully, wondering where this conversation might lead, and whether it could change their lives forever. After that unforgettable evening at the restaurant, life returned to its usual rhythm for Claire Harper and her son Liam. By day, Claire juggled 2 jobs, working long hours as a waitress and cleaning offices at night, to make ends meet. By night, she tucked Liam into bed, read him stories, and reminded him how much she loved him. Despite their hardships, they had each other, and that was enough to keep going. Liam, however, couldn't stop talking about the restaurant. "Mommy, do you think I can play the piano again someday?" he asked during breakfast one morning. His eyes sparkled with excitement as he chewed on a piece of toast. Claire smiled softly but hesitated before answering. She didn't want to crush his dreams, but she also knew the reality of their situation. Piano lessons were expensive, and even though Liam showed promise, they simply couldn't afford such luxuries. "I'm sure you'll get another chance to play," Claire said, choosing her words carefully. "But we have to focus on what's important right now, okay? Like school and finishing your homework." Liam nodded, though a hint of disappointment lingered in his expression. He understood his mom worked hard for them, but deep down, he wished things could be different. Music made him feel alive in a way nothing else did. Whenever he touched the piano keys, it was like stepping into a world where everything felt possible. Meanwhile, Ethan Cole couldn't shake the memory of that night either. Back in his sleek penthouse apartment, he found himself replaying the scene over and over in his mind. There was something about Claire and Liam that stuck with him. Something raw and genuine that he rarely encountered in his world of wealth and privilege. It wasn't just the boy's talent that intrigued him. It was the quiet strength Claire displayed, holding her family together despite the odds stacked against her. Ethan decided to dig deeper. Using his connections, he discreetly gathered information about Claire and Liam. What he discovered only deepened his admiration. Claire had lost her husband 3 years ago in a car accident, leaving her to raise Liam alone. Since then, she'd taken on multiple jobs while ensuring Liam attended weekly music lessons, a sacrifice she managed by stretching every penny to its limit. Her resilience struck a chord within Ethan, reminding him of his own struggles when he first started building his empire. One afternoon, Ethan visited the cafe where Claire sometimes worked during her second shift. Sitting at a corner table with a cup of coffee, he observed her from afar. She moved gracefully between tables, refilling cups and chatting kindly with customers. Even amidst the chaos of orders and spilled drinks, she carried herself with dignity and grace. Ethan noticed the faint lines of exhaustion etched on her face, yet her smile never faltered. It was clear she poured everything she had into providing for her son. When Claire spotted Ethan sitting alone, she froze momentarily. She recognized him instantly, the man who had approached her after Liam played the piano. For a brief moment, panic flickered across her face. Why was he here? Did he want something from her? Or worse, had he changed his mind about letting the incident go? Summoning her courage, Claire walked over to his table. "Mr. Cole?" She greeted him politely, clutching her notepad tightly. "Can I get you anything else?" Ethereal shook his head. "No, thank you. Actually, I wanted to speak with you, if you have a moment." Claire hesitated, glancing around to see if any customers needed her attention. When she saw none, she pulled out a chair and sat down reluctantly. "What is it?" she asked, trying to mask her unease. "I've been thinking about Liam," Ethan began, leaning forward slightly. "About his passion for music and the potential I see in him. I'd like to help." Claire blinked, caught off guard. "Help? How?" "My foundation supports gifted children," Ethan explained. "We provide scholarships, resources, and opportunities for kids to develop their talents. If you're willing, I'd like to sponsor Liam's musical education. Tuition, instruments, performances, it would all be covered." For a moment, Claire was speechless. The offer sounded too good to be true. A wave of emotions washed over. Her hope, gratitude, suspicion. She forced herself to stay calm, her instincts urging caution. "That's very generous," she said slowly. "But why would you do this? You don't even know us." Ethan met her gaze steadily. "Because I believe in giving people a chance. And because I see something special in Liam, not just his talent, but his heart. He reminds me of myself when I was younger, chasing big dreams with little means." Claire studied his face, searching for any sign of insincerity. All she found was earnestness. Still, she couldn't accept blindly. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Cole, but I need to think about it. This isn't a decision I can make lightly." "Of course," Ethan replied, nodding. "Take your time. Just know that my intentions are genuine. I want to help, not impose." As Claire returned to work, her mind raced. Could she trust Ethan? Was this truly an opportunity for Liam? Or was there a hidden agenda? She wrestled with these questions late into the night, weighing the pros and cons. On one hand, accepting his offer could open doors for Liam that she could never unlock on her own. On the other hand, relying on someone else's generosity felt risky, especially when she didn't fully understand their motives. The next day, Claire called Ethan and agreed to meet him at his office. She wanted to ask more questions, to ensure she understood exactly what he was proposing. When she arrived, she was struck by the stark contrast between her world and his. The building was modern and luxurious, with glass walls and polished floors. Employees bustled about, dressed in suits and carrying tablets. Claire felt out of place in her simple jeans and sweater, but she held her head high. Ethan greeted her warmly and led her to a conference room. Over coffee, he patiently answered all her concerns. He assured her the sponsorship came with no strings attached and emphasized that Liam's education would remain her responsibility. "Think of me as a facilitator," he said. "You're still the guiding force in his life. I'm just here to remove some obstacles." Claire listened carefully, her initial skepticism gradually giving way to cautious optimism. Ethan's sincerity seemed genuine, and his answers addressed her fears. By the end of the meeting, she felt a flicker of hope, a possibility that maybe, just maybe, life could get a little easier for Liam. That evening, Claire sat down with Liam to discuss the offer. "There's someone who wants to help you pursue your love for music," she told him gently. "He thinks you're really talented and wants to give you the tools to grow." Liam's eyes widened with excitement. "Does that mean I can take more lessons and practice on a real piano?" "Yes, sweetheart," Claire said, smiling despite the lump in her throat. "But remember, this is a big responsibility. Hard work will always matter more than having nice things." "I promise I'll work hard, Mommy," Liam exclaimed, throwing his arms around her neck. Claire hugged him tightly, tears pricking her eyes. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to dream, not just for Liam, but for both of them. Over the following weeks, Ethan kept his word. He arranged for Liam to attend a prestigious music school, covering tuition and supplies. He also provided access to a practice studio equipped with a grand piano, giving Liam the space to hone his skills. Claire watched her son flourish, his confidence growing with each new piece he mastered. Yet she remained vigilant, ensuring Liam stayed grounded and grateful. Ethan, too, found himself changing. Spending time with Claire and Liam reignited parts of him he thought were long buried. Their resilience inspired him, reminding him of the values he once held dear. Slowly, he began opening up, sharing stories of his own journey and connecting with them on a deeper level. Despite their growing bond, Claire maintained boundaries. She refused to let Ethan's generosity overshadow her role as Liam's mother. At the same time, she couldn't deny the warmth she felt whenever they interacted. There was kindness in Ethan's actions, a sincerity that went beyond mere philanthropy. As the weeks turned into months, she started to wonder if perhaps this partnership might lead to something more, for all of them. Life wasn't perfect, and challenges still loomed ahead. But for now, Claire and Liam had hope. And sometimes, hope was enough to carry you through even the darkest days. Months had passed since Ethan Cole entered their lives, and Liam Harper's world had transformed in ways Claire could never have imagined. Every Saturday morning, Liam eagerly packed his music sheet and headed to the prestigious music school Ethan had arranged for him. The instructors were patient and kind, recognizing his potential despite his age. At first, Liam struggled to keep up with the advanced techniques taught in class, but his determination never wavered. He practiced tirelessly, often spending hours after school at the studio Ethan provided. The studio itself became a sanctuary for Liam. It was a cozy space filled with natural light streaming through large windows that overlooked the bustling city below. A sleek grand piano stood proudly in the center of the room, its polished surface gleaming under the sunlight. For Liam, it felt like stepping into a dream every time he sat down to play. The sound of the piano resonated deeply within him, filling the empty spaces left by loss and hardship. Claire watched her son grow not just as a musician but also as a person. He carried himself with newfound confidence, speaking animatedly about his lessons and sharing snippets of melodies he'd learned. Sometimes when she picked him up from the studio, she'd find him lost in concentration, his small hands gliding effortlessly over the keys. She'd stand quietly by the door, letting the music wash over her, feeling both proud and humbled by how far they'd come. Ethan visited occasionally, dropping by unannounced to check on Liam's progress. He never stayed long, just enough to listen to a few pieces and offer words of encouragement, but his presence meant the world to Liam. To the boy, Ethan wasn't just a benefactor. He was someone who believed in him when others might have doubted. Over time, Liam began referring to Ethan as Mr. Ethan, a title that carried respect and admiration. For Claire, however, Ethan's involvement remained bittersweet. On one hand, she was endlessly grateful for what he'd done for Liam. Without his support, none of this would have been possible. But on the other hand, she couldn't shake the feeling of indebtedness. Accepting help from someone so wealthy felt precarious, as though she were walking a tightrope without a safety net. What if Ethan decided to withdraw his sponsorship? Or worse, what if he expected something in return? Her fears weren't entirely unfounded. As word spread about Liam's talent and Ethan's role in nurturing it, whispers began to circulate. Some praised Ethan's generosity, calling him a modern-day hero. Others questioned his motives, suggesting he was using Liam as a publicity stunt to boost his public image. Rumors swirled, painting Claire as either lucky or opportunistic, depending on who you asked. At work, co-workers treated her differently. Some congratulated her, genuinely happy for her son's success. Others gave her sideways glances, their smiles tinged with envy or suspicion. One day, while serving tables at the restaurant, Claire overheard two patrons discussing her. "That waitress whose kid plays piano," one said. "Didn't some rich guy swoop in and save the day?" Claire's cheeks burned with embarrassment. She wanted to defend herself, to explain that she hadn't asked for any of this, but she knew it wouldn't matter. People would always talk, twisting stories to fit their own narratives. Instead, she focused on doing her job, keeping her head down and reminding herself why she accepted Ethan's offer in the first place, for Liam. Despite the gossip, Claire refused to let negativity overshadow their achievements. She reminded Liam daily to stay humble and work hard, reinforcing the values she'd instilled in him since he was little. "Remember, sweetheart," she told him one evening, "music isn't about fame or money. It's about expressing yourself and touching people's hearts." Liam nodded earnestly, absorbing her words. Though still young, he understood the importance of staying grounded. He loved playing the piano not because it made others clap or cheer, but because it made him feel whole. When his fingers danced across the keys, everything else faded away. The noise, the struggles, the doubts. All that mattered was the music. Meanwhile, Ethan faced challenges of his own. Supporting Liam and Claire brought him immense satisfaction, but it also stirred emotions he'd buried long ago. Watching Liam's joy reminded him of his childhood, growing up in a modest household with dreams bigger than his circumstances allowed. Back then, he'd worked odd jobs to pay for piano lessons, determined to prove himself. Music had been his escape, much like it was for Liam now. But as Ethan climbed the ladder of success, he sacrificed parts of himself along the way. Relationships fell by the wayside, replaced by business deals and endless meetings. Loneliness became his constant companion, masked by wealth and achievement. Helping Liam reignited a spark within him, a longing for connection and purpose beyond profit margins. One afternoon, after listening to Liam play a particularly moving piece, Ethan turned to Claire. "You've raised an incredible son," he said sincerely. "He has a gift, but more importantly, he has heart." Claire smiled faintly, touched by his words. "Thank you," she replied. "I couldn't have done it without your help." Ethan shook his head. "No, Claire, you're the one holding it all together. I'm just trying to make things a little easier." His honesty caught her off guard. For the first time, she saw vulnerability in him, a glimpse of the man beneath the polished exterior. It softened her perception of him, chipping away at the wall she'd built to protect herself. Maybe Ethan wasn't just a billionaire looking for a cause. Maybe he was simply a man searching for meaning, just like everyone else. As the weeks went by, their interactions grew warmer, less formal. Ethan began inviting Claire and Liam to events hosted by his foundation, introducing them to musicians and educators who could further inspire Liam. At first, Claire hesitated, unsure if she belonged in such circles. But Ethan assured her it was okay, gently guiding her through unfamiliar territory. During one such event, Claire found herself seated next to Ethan at a gala dinner. The room glittered with crystal chandeliers and designer gowns, a stark contrast to her usual surroundings. She felt out of place, tugging nervously at the hem of her dress. Sensing her discomfort, Ethan leaned closer. "Relax," he whispered. "You look beautiful." Claire blushed, taken aback by his compliment. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice barely audible above the hum of conversation. For a moment their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. An understanding, perhaps, or the beginning of something deeper. Back home, Claire reflected on the evening. She thought about Ethan's kindness, his genuine interest in Liam's future, and the way he seemed to see her, not as a struggling waitress, but as a woman capable of strength and grace. It confused her, stirring emotions she hadn't felt in years. Was it wrong to feel drawn to him? To hope for something more? She pushed the thoughts aside, focusing instead on the present. Whatever happened between her and Ethan, Liam's happiness came first. And right now, Liam was thriving. His teachers praised his progress, predicting a bright future if he continued working hard. Each note he played brought them closer to a life where music wasn't just a dream, but a reality. Still, Claire couldn't deny the change in her heart. Ethan had opened doors for Liam, yes, but he'd also awakened something within her, a belief that maybe, just maybe, second chances existed. Not just for her son, but for her too. As winter approached, snow dusted the streets, casting a quiet magic over the city. Inside the practice studio, Liam played a cheerful holiday tune, his laughter mingling with the melody. Claire stood by the window, watching him with tears in her eyes. Behind her, Ethan listened silently, his gaze shifting between mother and God. In that moment, amidst the music and the warmth, all three of them felt a flicker of hope, a promise that no matter how difficult the road ahead, they would face it together. Liam's first big performance arrived sooner than anyone expected. It was a small recital organized by his music school, held in a modest auditorium filled with parents, teachers, and fellow students. For Claire, the event felt monumental. She dressed Liam in his best outfit, a crisp white shirt and dark trousers, and spent extra time combing his unruly curls. As they walked into the building, she could feel her heart pounding in her chest. This wasn't just another practice session. It was Liam's chance to shine in front of an audience. Ethan had promised to attend, and when Claire spotted him sitting near the front row, her nerves settled slightly. His presence gave her a sense of reassurance, though she couldn't quite explain why. He nodded at her warmly as she took her seat, mouthing a silent "good luck" before turning his attention to the stage. The program began with younger students playing simple pieces. Each performer received polite applause, but the room truly came alive when Liam's turn arrived. As he stepped onto the stage, the spotlight casting a soft glow around him, Claire held her breath. Liam looked so small behind the grand piano, his feet barely reaching the pedals. Yet there was no trace of fear in his expression, only focus and determination. When his fingers touched the keys, the room fell silent. The melody he played was hauntingly beautiful, filled with emotion that belied his age. Claire watched in awe, tears streaming down her face as she realized how much he'd grown. Every late-night practice session, every sacrifice they'd made, it all led to this moment. The audience listened intently, captivated by the purity of his performance. When the final note faded, the room erupted into applause. People stood cheering enthusiastically as Liam bowed shyly. Claire rushed to the stage, pulling him into a tight hug. "You were amazing, sweetheart," she whispered, kissing the top of his head. Ethan joined them moments later, clapping loudly. "That was incredible, Liam," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've got a gift." The praise continued long after the recital ended. Parents approached Claire, congratulating her on raising such a talented son. Teachers praised Liam's technique and musicality, predicting a bright future for him if he stayed dedicated. For the first time in years, Claire allowed herself to bask in the glow of pride, not just for Liam's talent, but for the journey they'd taken together. However, Not everyone shared in the celebration. Outside the auditorium, whispers of criticism lingered. Some critics dismissed Ethan's involvement as a calculated move to boost his public image. Others accused Claire of exploiting her son's talent for financial gain. Social media buzzed with speculation, dissecting every detail of their story. Headlines like "Billionaire backs boy prodigy" and "Waitress turned star mom" dominated local news outlets. Claire tried to ignore the noise, focusing instead on supporting Liam. But the negativity weighed heavily on her, chipping away at her confidence. One evening, while scrolling through her phone during a rare break at work, she stumbled upon a particularly harsh comment. What makes her kid so special? Just another rich man's charity project. Her hands trembled as she set the phone aside, fighting back tears. How could people be so cruel? She hadn't asked for any of this, hadn't sought out Ethan's help or begged for recognition. All she wanted was a better life for her son, a chance for him to pursue his dreams without the constant burden of financial strain. Later that night, Claire confided in Ethan during one of their meetings. "I don't know how much longer I can handle this," she admitted, her voice breaking. "Every time I turn around, someone has something negative to say. They act like we're doing something wrong." Ethan listened patiently, his expression thoughtful. "People will always find something to criticize," he said gently. "But what matters is how you respond. Don't let their words define you or Liam. Focus on what's real, his talent, your strength, and the love you share." His words offered some comfort, but Claire knew the challenges wouldn't disappear overnight. She resolved to shield Liam from the negativity as much as possible, ensuring he remained focused on his music rather than external opinions. At the same time, she vowed to stand firm, refusing to let anyone diminish their achievements. Ethan, too, faced backlash for his involvement. Business associates questioned his motives, suggesting he was using Liam as a marketing tool. Reporters hounded him for interviews, probing for details about his relationship with Claire and Liam. Though accustomed to scrutiny, Ethan found himself growing weary of the constant attention. Helping Liam and Claire had been an act of kindness, not a business strategy, and he resented the implication otherwise. Despite the obstacles, the trio persevered. Liam continued practicing diligently, preparing for larger performances and competitions. Claire juggled her jobs with renewed determination, determined to provide stability even as their lives changed. And Ethan remained steadfast in his support, attending recitals, arranging opportunities, and offering guidance whenever needed. Over time, their bond deepened. Ethan became more than just a benefactor. He was a mentor, a friend, and perhaps something more to Claire. Their interactions grew warmer, less formal. Conversations stretched beyond Liam's progress, delving into personal topics and shared experiences. Claire found herself opening up in ways she hadn't in years, sharing stories of her late husband and the struggles she faced raising Liam alone. One evening, after dropping Liam off at a rehearsal, Claire and Ethan decided to grab coffee together. Sitting across from each other in a quiet cafe, they talked openly about their fears and hopes. Claire confessed her worries about losing herself in the whirlwind of success and criticism. "Sometimes I feel like I'm living someone else's life," she admitted. "Like none of this is real." Ethan reached across the table, placing a reassuring hand over hers. "It's real, Claire. Everything you've done, for Liam, for yourself. It's real. Don't let anyone take that away from you." His touch sent a shiver through her, awakening feelings she'd buried long ago. She pulled her hand back gently, unsure how to process the emotions swirling inside her. Was it wrong to feel this way? To imagine a future where Ethan wasn't just a part of Liam's life but hers too? As the weeks passed, these thoughts lingered in the back of her mind. Ethan seemed to notice the shift in their dynamic as well, though neither addressed it directly. Instead, they focused on nurturing Liam's growth, celebrating each milestone together. Whether it was mastering a difficult piece or receiving praise from a renowned instructor, they shared in the joy and pride that came with watching him flourish. By spring, Liam's hard work paid off. He was invited to perform at a prestigious youth concert, sharing the stage with other gifted musicians from across the country. The event took place in a grand hall, its opulent design rivaling the finest venues in the city. As Claire adjusted Liam's tie backstage, she marveled at how far they'd come. From a humble restaurant piano to this glittering stage, their journey had been nothing short of extraordinary. Ethan arrived just before the performance, slipping into a seat near the front. His eyes met Claire's briefly, and she gave him a grateful smile. Together, they watched as Liam stepped onto the stage, his confidence radiating outward. When he began to play, the audience fell silent, mesmerized by the beauty of his music. Tears streamed down Claire's face as she realized this was only the beginning. For Liam, for her, and for whatever lay ahead. In that moment, surrounded by love and possibility, Claire allowed herself to hope. Maybe second chances weren't just for dreams. They were for hearts too. As summer approached, Liam's schedule became busier than ever. Between rehearsals, performances, and schoolwork, finding time for anything else felt nearly impossible. Yet, despite the whirlwind of activity, Claire made sure her son stayed grounded. Every evening after dinner, they sat together at their small dining table, going over his homework and discussing the day's events. Music might have been Liam's passion, but Claire reminded him that education came first. Ethan continued to play a vital role in their lives, offering guidance and support whenever needed. He attended most of Liam's concerts, always sitting quietly in the audience, his eyes fixed on the stage. After each performance, he'd congratulate Liam warmly, praising not just his talent but also his dedication. "You're working harder than anyone I know," Ethan told him once. "That's what makes you truly special." Liam beamed at the compliment, but Claire noticed something deeper in Ethan's words, a sense of admiration that extended beyond Liam. Over time, she realized Ethan wasn't just proud of her son, he was proud of her too. Watching her balance work, parenting, and life with such resilience inspired him in ways he hadn't anticipated. Their relationship evolved subtly yet steadily. What began as a professional partnership blossomed into genuine friendship. They started spending more time together outside of Liam's activities, sharing meals, taking walks, or simply talking late into the night. Ethan opened up about his own struggles, revealing the loneliness that had accompanied his rise to success. Claire listened intently, her heart softening toward him. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a future where she wasn't alone. But challenges still loomed ahead. As Liam gained recognition, so did the scrutiny surrounding their family. Critics grew louder, questioning whether Claire was capable of guiding her son through the pressures of fame. Some accused her of relying too heavily on Ethan, implying she lacked the sophistication or experience to handle such a high-profile situation. Others dismissed Liam's achievements altogether, claiming his success was due solely to Ethan's influence. Claire tried to shield Liam from these criticisms, but it wasn't always easy. One afternoon, while scrolling through social media, during a break at work, she stumbled upon a particularly scathing article titled, "The Waitress Who Let Wealth Change Her Son." The headline stung, but the content cut even deeper. The writer attacked her parenting choices, accusing her of pushing Liam too hard and prioritizing fame over happiness. Tears blurred her vision as she read the words. How could someone judge her without knowing her story? She thought about all the sacrifices she'd made, for Liam, for their future, and wondered if it was worth it. Was she doing the right thing, or was she setting him up for disappointment? That evening, Claire confided in Ethan. Sitting across from him in his office, she recounted the article word for word, her voice trembling with emotion. "They act like I'm using you, like I don't care about my own son," she said bitterly. "But I would do anything for him. Anything." Ethan listened patiently, his expression calm but serious. "People will always find fault, no matter what you do," he replied. "What matters is how you respond. Don't let their opinions dictate your decisions or Liam's future. You're an amazing mother, Claire. Never forget that." His reassurance helped ease some of her doubts, but the negativity lingered. To combat it, Claire doubled down on keeping Liam focused and grounded. She reminded him daily that success wasn't about applause or accolades. It was about loving what he did and staying true to himself. "Music is your gift," she told him one morning. "Use it to make people happy, not to impress them." Liam nodded earnestly, absorbing her advice. Though only 6 years old, he understood the importance of humility. He loved playing the piano because it made him feel alive, not because it earned him praise. Still, the pressure mounted as bigger opportunities arose. Invitations poured in, from prestigious music festivals to television appearances, and deciding which ones to accept became increasingly difficult. Ethan stepped in to help navigate the chaos. Drawing on his business expertise, he worked with Claire to create a balanced schedule that prioritized Liam's well-being. "We need to protect his childhood," Ethan emphasized. "Fame can wait. Right now, he should be enjoying being a kid." Claire appreciated his perspective, grateful for his level-headed approach. Together, they turned down several offers, opting instead for smaller, more meaningful engagements. These included charity concerts, community events, and school performances, where Liam could connect with audiences on a personal level. Each time he played, his love for music shone through, touching hearts and inspiring others. Through it all, Ethan remained a constant presence in their lives. He joined them for weekend outings, cheering Liam on during soccer games and helping Claire carry groceries when she was tired. Slowly, he became part of their routine, a trusted friend who cared deeply about their happiness. Claire found herself leaning on him more often, seeking his advice not just about Liam but about her own dreams and fears. One evening, after tucking Liam into bed, Claire and Ethan sat together on the porch, sipping tea under a sky filled high with stars. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of blooming flowers. For a while, neither spoke, content to enjoy the peaceful silence. Finally, Claire broke the quiet. "Do you ever regret getting involved in our lives?" she asked softly, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Ethan hesitated before answering. "No," he said firmly. "Helping you and Liam has brought me more joy than I ever expected. You've reminded me of things I'd forgotten, like the importance of family and purpose. I wouldn't trade this for anything." His words sent a wave of warmth through Claire, melting away some of the walls she'd built around her heart. She glanced at him, noticing the sincerity in his eyes. For the first time, she allowed herself to consider the possibility of letting him in not just as a friend but as something more. Over the next few weeks, their connection deepened further. Conversations stretched longer, laughter came easier, and moments of silence felt comfortable rather than awkward. Ethan began opening up about his past, sharing stories of his childhood and the sacrifices he'd made to build his empire. Claire listened intently, realizing how much they had in common: their resilience, their determination, their desire to create a better future. One rainy afternoon, as they walked home from a local cafe, Ethan stopped suddenly, turning to face Claire. "I know this might sound crazy," he began, his voice hesitant, "but I think I'm falling for you." Claire froze, her breath catching in her throat. She'd suspected his feelings were changing, but hearing him say the words aloud took her by surprise. Her mind raced with conflicting emotions: excitement, fear, uncertainty. Could she trust him? Could she risk opening her heart again after so many years of protecting it? I don't know what to say," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't have to say anything," Ethan replied quickly. "I just wanted you to know how I feel. Whenever you're ready, we'll figure it out together." His patience gave her comfort, allowing her the space to process her thoughts. That night, lying awake in bed, Claire reflected on everything they'd been through: the challenges, the triumphs, the moments of connection. Ethan had become an integral part of their lives, not just for Liam, but for her too. And though fear of the unknown still lingered, she couldn't deny the hope blossoming within her. By autumn, their bond had grown stronger than ever. They spent weekends exploring parks, attending festivals, and simply enjoying each other's company. Liam adored having Ethan around, treating him like a second father figure. For Claire, seeing the two of them interact brought immense joy. It felt like the start of something new, a chapter filled with possibilities. As leaves turned golden and crisp, the trio prepared for another milestone, Liam's debut at a renowned concert hall. The event promised to be a defining moment, not just for Liam but for all of them. Standing backstage, Claire held her son's hand tightly, her heart swelling with pride. Ethan stood nearby, offering a reassuring smile. When Liam stepped onto the stage, the world seemed to fade away. All that mattered was the music, the notes flowing effortlessly from his fingertips, carrying with them the hopes and dreams of a family united by love and perseverance. In that moment, surrounded by applause and admiration, Claire realized something profound. Life's greatest symphonies weren't composed of wealth or fame, but of courage, kindness, and the bonds we create along the way. The night of Liam's debut at the renowned concert hall arrived, bringing with it a mix of excitement and nerves. Claire spent hours preparing him, ensuring every detail was perfect, from his neatly pressed suit to the shine on his shoes. As they drove to the venue, Liam sat quietly in the back seat, clutching his sheet music tightly. He wasn't scared exactly, but the weight of the occasion hung heavy in the air. Ethan met them outside the hall, dressed impeccably as always. He greeted Liam with a firm handshake and Claire with a reassuring smile. "You've got this," he told Liam confidently. "Just remember why you're here, to share your love of music." Liam nodded, his confidence bolstered by Ethan's words. Together, the three of them entered the building, stepping into a world far removed from their everyday lives. The concert hall was breathtaking, its high ceilings adorned with intricate chandeliers that cast a warm glow over the rows of seats. People milled about, chatting animatedly while waiting for the performance to begin. Claire felt out of place among the elegantly dressed crowd, but Ethan stayed close, his presence grounding her. Backstage, Claire helped Liam adjust his tie one last time before sending him off with a hug. "Play from your heart, sweetheart," she whispered. "That's all that matters." As Liam took his seat at the grand piano, the auditorium fell silent. The spotlight illuminated him, making him look smaller than ever against the vastness of the stage. Yet when his fingers touched the keys, something magical happened. The melody flowed effortlessly, filling the room with a beauty that transcended age or experience. It was as if the music carried not just Liam's talent, but the hopes and struggles of everyone who had supported him along the way. Claire stood in the wings, tears streaming down her face as she listened. Every late-night practice session, every sacrifice, every moment of doubt, it all led to this. She glanced at Ethan, who watched intently, his expression soft with admiration. For the first time, she allowed herself to fully embrace the idea that they were no longer alone in this journey. They were a family, a patchwork one perhaps, but a family nonetheless. When the final note echoed through the hall, the audience erupted into applause. People stood clapping enthusiastically, some even wiping away tears. Liam rose from the piano bench, bowing shyly before retreating backstage. Claire rushed to meet him, pulling him into a tight hug. "You did it, sweetheart," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "I'm so proud of you." Ethan joined them moments later, congratulating Liam warmly. "That was incredible," he said, ruffling the boy's hair. "You made history tonight." The celebration continued long after the performance ended. Well-wishers crowded around, offering praise and congratulations. Teachers and mentors spoke of Liam's potential, predicting a bright future if he continued working hard. Reporters snapped photos, eager to capture the story of the young prodigy and the unlikely trio behind his success. For Claire, the evening marked more than just a milestone for Liam. It symbolized a turning point in her own life. Over the past year, she'd faced countless challenges, criticism, self-doubt, fear, but she'd overcome them all with resilience and grace. And now, standing beside Ethan and Liam, she realized how much she'd grown. She wasn't just a struggling waitress anymore. She was a mother who had fought tirelessly for her son's dreams, and a woman brave enough to open her heart again. In the weeks that followed, life began to settle into a new rhythm. Liam continued honing his skills, balancing schoolwork with rehearsals and performances. Claire scaled back her hours at the restaurant, focusing instead on supporting Liam and exploring opportunities for herself. With Ethan's encouragement, she enrolled in online courses, rediscovering a passion for art she'd set aside years ago. Ethan, too, found fulfillment in their partnership. Helping Claire and Liam reignited parts of him he thought were lost forever. The joy of connection, the satisfaction of purpose. He spent less time chasing business deals and more time nurturing the relationships that truly mattered. Slowly but surely, he let go of the loneliness that had haunted him for so long. Their bond deepened further as winter approached. One snowy evening, after attending a community event together, Ethan turned to Claire as they walked home. "I've been thinking," he began hesitantly, "about us, about where we go from here." Claire stopped, her breath visible in the cold air. She knew what he meant, the unspoken question hanging between them for months. Could they take the next step? Could they build a future together? "I think we already know the answer," she replied softly, smiling up at him. "We've been doing it all along, figuring things out day by day." Ethan grinned, relief washing over him. Reaching for her hand, he squeezed it gently. "Then let's keep going. Together." From that moment on, their relationship shifted subtly but significantly. Ethan became a permanent fixture in their lives, sharing meals, holidays, and quiet evenings at home. Liam adored having him around, treating him like the father figure he'd never known. For Claire, letting Ethan in felt like closing a chapter of isolation and opening one of belonging. By spring, the signs of change were everywhere. Claire's artwork began appearing in local galleries, earning her recognition and commissions. Liam performed at prestigious venues, his name becoming synonymous with promise and potential. And Ethan, once consumed by ambition, found peace in the simple joys of family life. One afternoon, as they strolled through a park bathed in sunlight, Liam skipped ahead, laughing as he chased butterflies. Claire and Ethan followed at a slower pace, hands intertwined. "Do you ever wonder how we got here?" Claire asked, glancing at him. "All the time," Ethan admitted. "But I think it's because we didn't give up. No matter how hard things got, we kept believing in Liam, in ourselves, in each other." Claire nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. Life hadn't been easy, and challenges still lay ahead, but for the first time in years she felt hopeful. Not just for Liam's future, but for hers and Ethan's too. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the park, Claire realized something profound. Success wasn't measured by wealth or fame. It was defined by the moments that mattered most. Moments like this one, walking hand in hand with the people she loved, surrounded by laughter and light. And in those moments, she understood that life's greatest symphonies weren't written with notes or melodies, but with courage, kindness, and the bonds we create along the way.